I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And as always, I have an incredible warrior guest to introduce to you today, Shawna Burkholder, and I'll come back to her in just a second. But let me explain to you why you're here. Success is a journey. It's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world, and in each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life: entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, authors, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause. They have unique value and a vision that goes generations into the future, and today's guest is absolutely no exception. Shawna Burkholder is an awesome warrior. Her warrior journey of over 30 years began in the nonprofit sector as a fundraiser, where she met scores of amazing and generous people. This experience led her to pursue a career as a certified financial advisor, specializing in transition to retirement. In this role, she was able to help people build and protect their financial assets so they in turn could have a bigger impact and leave a legacy. I love that, especially as we get older, right? We start thinking about what are we leaving behind. Today, as a life transformation expert, Shawna guides overachieving professionals, I guess I probably qualify for that, who are experiencing burnout through a proven process that enables them to live a fulfilled life with career satisfaction, increased mental clarity, healthy relationships, and physical vibrancy. And I love that one. That's my goal is to get to 120 with the vitality of a 30-year-old. So we're right on this. We're very aligned there. Her warrior journey has also included climbing Mount Hood, completing 13 marathons and 6 half marathons, enjoys being an avid Seattle sports fan. There's where we depart, and traveling for concerts and amusement parks. Finally, her book titled Fierce Awakenings, calling in courage and confidence to walk life's spiral path, just launched this week, so that's exciting. Shawna Burkholder, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are things in Washington State today?
Oh, David, thank you so much for such a generous introduction, and I'm excited to be here today, which we're in that cusp of summer into fall, is a glorious day. We're going to hit a beautiful, perfect 75 degrees, but I ask you and your listeners not to spread that information around. Please perpetuate the rumor that it rains all the time. Because we're a little full, and we love our outdoors being green and luscious, and we've got the best summers that move into the fall. Fall for us hits, I always say, at Halloween, and so we're glorious from July 5th to October 30th.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. So let me ask you a question that only somebody who's spent time in Washington. Is Rainier out today?
Yes, very much so.
I do know that. Yeah, I think we shared. I spent some time with my daughter and son-in-law and grandkids and out in Washington in the same area that you're in, and we always had a view. So that was if it was going to be a nice sunny day or not dealing with rain all day, you could usually count on it. If Rainier was out, it's going to be a good day. If you can see Mount Rainier at the top of Rainier, then we knew that day was going to be a day for golf or having fun. So, but anyway, so what else is going on? Anything else going on? I mean, the book launch thing, tell me a little bit about that. How's that going?
Oh, absolutely. So the official launch was yesterday, where people are able to purchase the book on Amazon and the Barnes & Noble's website. So it's really great because the book is a collaboration. It's an anthology. I'm one of 12 women who basically shared a turning point in their life where they had what we're calling a fierce awakening. It was that moment for many, or kind of like a spiritual awakening. They heard their calling, their purpose, and they made dramatic changes in their life. So it's been incredible because it's different than doing a solo book where it's all about you and working with your publisher to promote and do all the technical pieces, because we have formed a sisterhood and we have our own private group on Facebook. We have a WhatsApp group, and it's a very creative group of women also. So people are sharing their art, they're pulling oracle cards, we're supporting each other, and also recommending lots of opportunities to rest, because energetically it's we likened it to the birthing process. So this book has been gestating for 9 months, and birth was yesterday. And tell you what, we just want to all go back to bed and take a rest. where there's that mix between I'm exhausted and I'm exhilarated. So that's kind of my state for where I'm at today.
Well, I got to tell you, that's actually, I know exactly, not the specific that you're dealing with, but I know that feeling. And I don't think there's really anything better than going to bed exhausted from something that you really love, or that kind of thing. It's one thing to go to bed tired because you're drained, because you've been doing things that were expiring to you all day long, which happens, right, with people who do something in their life that they don't love, or they're dealing with the zombies that are outside the door, and they're just trying to fight them off. But when you're dealing with something inspiring to you, that tired is a different tired. And it's good to, obviously, from a health standpoint, we all need good rest, and we all need good hydration and eating right, all those good things. But if I'm going to choose to be tired, I'd rather burn out than rust out anyway. So let's keep going, right? So, well, let's do this. I really, really, really want to get into your story. I know that's part of this anthology, this book that you've created. I know it's something that's kind of top of mind. So I really want to share your story with the audience. So we're going to move into the second segment here after you hear the audio audience. Here's a little snippet of our theme song, It's Not the Getting There, by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be right back, and we'll hear your story on Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher, while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time, wherever you go. It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race.
All right, Shawna, we're going to have some real fun here. So tell me, you get to pick where you want to call it start, because I know, like me, you have journey. You can probably start a lot of different places. Most warriors can. So tell me, how did you get from where you started to where now you are today?
You're absolutely right. There's so many different starting points we have. In fact, when I think about it, every person's life is made up of a string of stories. And hopefully, some of those stories don't have happy endings, but then we start a new chapter and we move forward. We have a new story. I'm going to start at the very beginning, because for me, at least, that has relevance to where I am today. I was born, we talked about this earlier, at an Army hospital, because my dad at the time was in the Army. And it just so happened I was about a month premature. And it was, it was late afternoon when I was born. 12 hours later, so it would have been the next day, my mom passed away. She had she had a brain aneurysm. At this point in time, I have no idea if that was related to my birth, or if she had always had an issue with the blood vessels in her head where there was the rupture on that vein. So she passed away. And many people have that reaction about, oh, I'm so sorry. And it strikes me as interesting because, of course, I would have loved to have grown up with my biological mom. I would love to have known more about her and how my life would be different if she was the one to raise me. But on the other hand, unlike people who've been raised by a maternal figure and that person passes away, I didn't really have an emotional connection. So it's a little bit different, right? But here for me is where it gets interesting. I was like, my father was in the Army, and it took a little bit of time before he got an honorable discharge because he was essentially still a newlywed. I think they had not recently, but a year prior been married. So he had his new wife, had a brand new baby, had a vision of raising this family with the woman he loved. And now he's a widower with an infant, which I don't think he had intended to be the sole, caregiver for. My maternal grandparents lived in the same town, so they took me in for, again, this is very fuzzy because obviously I was an infant, but for several months. And then I always want to use the word given, but that's such a strange term, right? My paternal grandparents then took over my being raised for about another year. So now as an adult, and I've done some research around attachment theory, that is, how as an infant we view the world. Is it a safe place? Is it a scary place? And I recognized that I didn't have the attachment to my primary maternal figure, my mother. And although I absolutely believe that both sets of my grandparents loved me to pieces, I was their lifeline to their daughter, for instance, but they were also grieving. So that, I think, made a very deep subconscious impact on who I am and how I navigated the world. So going through and again, I think most of us know this, up until about the age of 7 or 8, we are very impressionable, and where a majority of our subconscious beliefs will be formed because we don't have the ability to filter and say, now I'm not going to choose that label or oh, I like that. I mean, we just get those internal sensing that the world is either safe or not safe. From there, I was an extremely shy child, and I was small because I was premature. My father did remarry. He and my stepmom, who I consider my mother because she raised me, she sensed in the spirit world, as is my father. Wonderful. Oh, God, I kept thinking, he could not have picked a better second mom for me. So I'm very grateful for that. And they had a child, my brother. He's just like a huge linebacker size-wise. Mm-hmm. And people would often think he was my older brother as we were growing up because I was tiny and he was large. But I have this concept where for many years I considered myself the invisible child. My stepmom had a daughter who was older, so I was the middle kid, and I sometimes felt overlooked. And in class, I felt overlooked. And I was also shy, so I wasn't like actually actively raising my hand and saying, here, I have something to say. So finally, it has taken years before I realized I have value to bring into the world, and it is up to me to figure out how to bring that forward in a way that's more visible. So instead of shrinking back, and feeling as if the world is not safe. Now I've had a shift that's happened. We'll be probably talking about that. That helps me show up authentically. And part of that was the book, Fierce Awakenings. Although it's not that story that I share, but as I said, I think our lives are made up of story after story. So I chose one that's different for the book.
Well, I'll tell you, that's you hit on any number of zombies, and I share with you it's a metaphor. It's basically the challenges, the things that we deal with. But obviously, as you said, one of the things I think is really fascinating, and maybe it's just because of the convergence of time and what's happening in my own life, but my daughter and her spouse, her wife, actually adopted a brand new baby. They were there. It's open adoption. They were there. They met her, they did skin to skin immediately. And actually listening to you describe your situation, it's not unlike this baby, because now my daughter is her mom. they're her parents, they're the attachment there. And you always think, well, how is that different than the biological mom? And even though, again, I'm sure there's that genetic or epigenetic or whatever transfer of DNA and things like that. It's just so fascinating to hear you say, yeah, that occurred, but really it wasn't. I mean, you saw my reaction, and you've heard other people, it's like, oh my gosh, but really you made it through that pretty seamlessly, and then had to actually embrace the support. The other thing you said, which a lot of people don't understand, is you can't rationalize with somebody under 7 years old. The frontal lobe isn't fully developed to the point where you're actually intellectualizing, if you will, or you're processing. So you just had to absorb the world that you were going through, not only what maybe was transferred genetically and whatever, but also just the environment that you were in, and it had an impact, which, again, those zombies, but the shyness, the being small versus large, I mean, navigating the stepmom, the siblings. I have 5 kids, so every kid is obviously unique and different, and they're all mine, but still the environment that then they're born into, whether they're the oldest or the youngest or the middle or in between, they all have adapted. So it's such a fascinating thought process of zombies that a lot of times we don't even think about. So tell me, I don't think, it doesn't seem like we're to today, although you did mention the book, which I know is today, but I mean, what else is in that whole journey? Anything else of your warrior journey?
Well, there's a couple of things. One of the things that I bring forth in the world right now is to assist people. For instance, I love the word journey, and I feel as if I liken my role in the world now as a guide. And because I'm in the Pacific Northwest, there's lots of mountains and forests. So I'm always thinking I'm in the forest with my people, and I'm ahead helping them navigate. Be careful, there's a cliff, or don't be shy, come out here because the vista, you'll never see a more spectacular view. Part of that came from making a transition for me when I didn't feel like I was worthy or deserving or enough. And I think that I'm not alone in that. I think there's a majority, and that's the zombie piece, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's a combination of things. I think because we talk about the internal and the external. So I think internally, people struggle with feeling like they are worthy. And they don't know, how do you become that? How do I move from being a zombie to a warrior internally? But then there's those external factors. So for me, they were combined. I'm very fortunate in that, as I said, my family that I was raised in was wonderful and loving and encouraging. Although occasionally I heard those teenage years when you're going through puberty and your prefrontal cortex is not, of course you make stupid mistakes. And guess what you hear? Why were you so, stupid? Or what were you thinking? I'm like, I wasn't thinking. Isn't it obvious? In any case, what I did do well is I was studious, because I was shy and I read well and I was articulate, and I was able to get employment. I started my first job at 13. I worked for the state at 17, and I've never not worked, because I also, one of those subconscious beliefs is work ethic is a primary value, and you work harder, and then you work harder if you're going to get ahead. There was no working smarter. It was just more. So what I found as I went through my 20s and my 30s, I worked a lot. That's probably an understatement. But I also found my value from my work. I worked in the world of nonprofits, which meant that they all had missions. I felt very connected to the people that we were serving. I was fortunate to be able to reach out to our donors who had time, talent, and treasure, and talk with them so that they could leave a legacy with helping people in our community. So it was all beautiful until it wasn't. So I had that charmed life. But what I recognized was I was coming in at 7 before anybody else did. I was, everybody would leave, even the janitor, turn off the lights. I'd be the last one out in the dark, which meant I wasn't spending time at home. I was missing dinner. When I was home, all the conversations were about work. It got to the point where it felt like I needed to come in and sacrifice my Saturdays. And I basically burned out. And let me tell you how it burned out for me. And I specialize in burned out, and there are continuums of burnout. There's just I'm feeling tired and fatigued, to I'm going to self-medicate by numbing this through alcohol or drugs, and that type of, to becoming suicidal. So for me, my relationship was bad. My health was bad. Work was not actually working anymore because I wasn't functioning efficiently, productively, because I couldn't. We, at this particular job I was at, so this was 10 years ago, almost to the day, we're having our largest fundraiser. It was a huge auction gala at a convention center. It was a joint auction with other nonprofits. We've been raising consistently for multiple years over $3.5 million during this event. And it's the kind of event you spend 9 months bringing up to speed, to birth, essentially. Mm-hmm. The previous 6 years, I'd been the primary caregiver for my biological grandmother. And I had been, making sure that, she was being well taken care of. And I visited her pretty much every day. And we had known since Christmas that her health was starting to fail. So we brought in hospice. The morning of the fundraiser, I get the call at about 6 a.m. from the home where she was at. I think this might be it. You need to come and say your goodbyes. So I go to of course I'd gone to bed late because I'm getting ready for the fundraiser. So I go to my grandmother's bedside, and it's about 10 minutes before she passes. Now, we knew it was coming, so we had most of the logistics worked out, signing paperwork, making sure everything got taken care of. And then I had to turn, within about an hour and a half, I had to turn my attention back to work. That decision weighed heavily in my soul for a long time. I even get teary about it now. I don't feel like I did this woman justice because I wasn't truly there for her. It was a task, and that pains me. So then the day of the fundraiser came, and I won't go into all the logistics. There was, of course, because it's a big event, there were issues during the day. My stress level went way up. But in the end, it went really well. I get done at the convention center about 3 a.m, go home, take a nap, essentially, to get back up to do more work. The following Monday, there is no opportunity to take bereavement leave because once an event is that large, you've got all the tasks that have to be followed up on. I never did take my bereavement leave. And that weighed heavily on me. So then I started questioning, as much as I love the work that I do and I'm exceptional at it, and it makes me feel good, it makes me feel like I have worth, I started to really question, is this the kind of worth I want to have? Is this the person I want to be? I also got to the point, and it was not a surprise, that in my relationship, the tension had gotten to the point where it was tenuous. And the question always being posed to me was, what are you going to do to fix it? And it wasn't, what are we going to do to fix the relationship? It was always had been on my shoulder. So at the 18-year mark, I decided I can't do this anymore. I just can't. And I had been going to a therapist, and bless her heart, she was trying to help me with some skill sets to have boundaries and better. But I had painted myself so far into that corner that I didn't know how to use those tools. And I call it, I imploded my life. And that's kind of the story that I added into the book, that I finally broke. And I said, no, I quit my job. I told my sweetheart of 18 years, I can't do this anymore. I sold my house. I packed everything into storage, and I went on a journey to find who I really was. And that's what brought me to this point, because I was able to kind of reinvent my life and start a whole new chapter.
Wow. Well, it sounds now like we're to today, but let me say this. I heard something here that maybe other people wouldn't hear, because as I think I shared with you, I was in ministry for 3 years. I've worked with nonprofits. My brother-in-law is an amazing consultant to nonprofits. He was the development director for the Soupmobile in Dallas. They had an annual event called Celebrate Jesus, which was a big fundraiser for the year that happened on New Year or Christmas Eve day. And beautiful event, everything. And one of my takeaways, and I tell this to pastors, leaders of nonprofits, the one thing that we do not do very well in that space, and I say we because I've kind of been in that role too, is valuing people's most valuable asset that they bring to the table when they choose to embrace your ministry, your charity, your cause. And that's the time. We tend to look at money coming in and money going out, and that's all the driver, right? But there's so many people to have a successful ministry or successful mission, if you will, that are giving that. And if you're not careful, those kind of businesses, and they're business, right? They're nonprofit business. They have a different financial structure, but they're still business, right? And they burn them out. They burn out the people, and then they lose, and then they have to replenish. And it's just like in any other company. If you're having excessive attrition, then you're spending all your time trying to get new people. So I just think that's a cool, not in a good way necessarily, but it's an important lesson for warriors that are listening, that maybe you're not paying somebody, but they're enlisting the support for your cause and the need to value the time that they invest. And that was the one that just jumped out at me. Obviously, there's some other things. But anyway, let's do this. I want to get into, I do think, what you're doing today, I kind of see where it's going. There's so many warrior lessons, nuggets, as I say, along the way that you've shared with us. But let's take another quick break. We'll come back and we'll hear about what you're doing today after we hear a little bit of Ricky Jean Wright and our theme song, It's Not the Getting There. We'll be right back with Shawna.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth.
All right, Shawna, I knew it would be good. Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate your honesty, transparency. And I know the challenges, the zombies that we overcome, it's not fun, but the idea is we're still standing and moving forward. So now today, we're back to today. What are you doing today, and kind of why?
A wonderful question. As you can tell from my past, I always felt that I was a mission-driven person or a servant leader. That really resonated with me. So as I made that transition and figured, well, what is the calling if I don't want to go back into that world? It was, I want to serve people, but more one-on-one rather than on the scope that I had been doing, where I felt like before I was the in-between person, right? I wasn't delivering the services that the nonprofit was doing for the people in need. I was more administration to make it possible for them to do that. It's like, I want to do that. I want to be able to touch people, to help them on their paths of life, find their calling, not be a zombie anymore, and find their internal warrior and shine out in the world so that they in turn can help other people. So on the path, after I did my travels, I decided I want to be a life coach. So I was certified as a life coach, and I'd always been interested in the field, because if you look at my bookcase, there is a lot of shelf help on my bookcase. And it was very exciting and I was good at it, but I also didn't understand how to create a business where I was the provider of the services. So that was about 7 years ago when I made that transition. I since have done other learnings and made great connections with people in the world. So I have my business. It's called Journey to Wholeness. And I named it Journey to Wholeness because although I don't feel like people are broken, I do feel sometimes like they're like, there's a hole in my heart. There's a hole in my soul. I'm looking to fill that hole. And for most people, that's from the external world. I'm looking for validation from other people. I'm looking for that job title. I'm looking for the bank account that says, I now have made it and I filled that hole. But why don't I feel right about that? So within that company, that vision that I have for my business, I have a program that's called the Path to Purpose. And that's where I work side by side as a guide, helping people tap into their calling. And many of them actually have it. They just haven't listened to it. There's, because I can, in my chapters, there's almost always some internal point where I just have that knowing, like I need to make this change, or I need to move forward, or here's an opportunity. But unfortunately, we don't tend to, when we're in a zombie phase mode, we don't like moving out of our comfort zone. Even if we dislike intensely where we're at, we still know what it is, and we're afraid to move beyond that boundary in order to explore moving into the warrior mindset, as you were, or heart feeling. So that's what I'm doing right now. Part of this too, the big awakening for me is to become visible, because you can't do this work and hide, right? You have to reach out to people. So I appreciate this opportunity. So this is my first book of 4 that I had managed to do. I am now speaking, which is new to me. I love speaking. I never had an issue with speaking within, the context of my job, but now I speak with a message and a mission in the world. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And of course, I offer people the opportunity to learn more about my services to see if I am the appropriate guide. You use the word Sherpa, to be the one that's helping them along their journey so they can get to that next phase of true fulfillment, of inner fulfillment, where their inside is coherent with their outside and they feel authentic. And internally, they say, I am enough, I am worthy, and I'm deserving. And they know it with every ounce of their being, and they don't need the external validation that they are loved.
I think that's so powerful. And by the way, I will tell you, my superpower, one of my unique values is connecting the dots, right? So I see dots and I see things that connect that other people don't see. I've always done that. That's how I ended up getting various jobs and roles along the way, because I didn't necessarily understand it. So, but some of the things you said, obviously, I think when we had our conversation, we have so much alignment there. There's so many things. And I can clearly see the why and what you're trying to do. And I can see through your story and just your journey, I can see the unique value. And we all have a unique value that you're bringing to the party. But let me ask you this. And if anything were possible, and I always follow that with all things are possible. I happen to be a Christian. I believe that with God, all things are possible. With the universe's help, if you're uncomfortable with that, pick whatever label you want. But it is just a matter of us embracing the possibilities. What kind of impact would you hope to have as you move forward with your journey?
That's such a beautiful question, and such a deep question. Wasn't too long ago, a year maybe, that I was listening to another podcast, and someone used the phrase God spark. And someone else had used a star seed, right? And I hadn't really heard it, or if I heard it, it didn't resonate at the time. But at that point, I was like, again, it was part of my awakening. I'm like, oh, inside of me is this spark that, that otherwise, that was gifted to me. And so my impact is I want others to be able to find their spark and ignite it, so that now that I am shining in the world, someone else will shine and be visible, and they'll find their true gifts and share that with other people. So in whatever way I help people find their purpose, if they're living into it, it's positive, right? I mean, your purposes aren't negative. My purpose isn't out to ruin the world or people. I mean, it's going to be a positive contribution, again, fulfilling and meaningful. And if they in turn impact other people, it's that ripple effect. And I really feel like where we are in the world today is at a point where we need more people, and we are getting more people to be at a higher consciousness, vibrating at a higher frequency and sending out more love into the world. And I just want to keep that going forward. I think that's my calling in life. And I really suspect it's part of everybody else's calling in life. It's just that they need help getting there.
Well, you said something, I mean, absolutely. I mean, my life purpose is changing the world one dream at a time. You say, how can you do that? It's very much like what you're describing here, which is basically you change the world, but it's really in the hands of one person at a time. But if then they are inspired in their own way, we don't all do the same thing. That's why you always use the term alignment. I don't have to agree or disagree. Life is real simple for me. I just have to love you and figure out how to serve you. And then that impact will manifest itself through time, through the journey, right? So you said that, you believe that you can help people find that spark, the God spark, again, that's that unique purpose. And yes, all things are possible. And as we continue down the journey, we're going to see things unfold. And so I love that. It's very clear why you're on this platform, why you were attracted here, because this podcast I've been doing on Be Connected for a while, and since it was a thing, and it's a way to get your story out. That's my podcast. It's about lifting up and getting people's story out and getting their dream or their vision out. And that's what we've just kind of done here today. And what a better place to do it, right? An intentional connection, not in a social meeting. I'm not dissing media. I'm saying every business, every cause needs media. We need to use media, not media use us. And so that's the difference here. And here, whether you realize it or not, as I have, we found a place where we can have these intentional connections. We haven't known each other forever. We didn't have to scramble to find each other. We just showed up in a community, just like if you were in a in-person networking group, right? And all of a sudden now we can have an impact we never could before, even though it's new, uncomfortable, things are happening. That's a thing. So I so love that. And I love your vision. I love what's going on. Let's do this. We need to land the plane, as I say. And you can tell I have 4 million miles on airlines, so I have a lot of these plane metaphors. But we'll go on to the final segment. Hear one more snippet of It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. And when we come back, I want to hear if we take away anything, because there's so many things we've covered and so many things that I can feel that are in your heart and messages. But if we take away one or two things, warriors are kind of overachievers. I used to say just one, but we take away anything from this conversation, what would you want us to take away when we come back from this break after hearing the audio audience a little bit of our theme song?
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn planted diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God.
All right, Shawna, we are back, and I know I didn't give you a lot of time, but you kind of knew where we were going here. So tell me, if we take away anything from this podcast or this show, what would you want us to take away?
David, at this point, I want to directly address your listeners who we'll call the zombies. And that is not a label I probably would have used for myself because it was just a different label, but I like it. But I want to address those people who are feeling burned out and fatigued and overwhelmed and trapped in their life. And that life could be their work life, their health, or their relationships, and maybe lacking in their spiritual lives. Because those are the people that feel stuck and need assistance. And so what I want to say to you, and of course it's true to the warriors, but I think they're probably there, is anything is possible. Absolutely, like David said. And it's not a matter of just having an attitude of gratitude or positive thinking. That helps. But at some point, there's a moment where you have to stop and say, is this the life that I want now? Is this the life that I want to continue living this year, next year, into my old age? And if the answer is no, then take that brave warrior first step to change your life. And that step may be different for each person. Find someone that you're aligned with, because oftentimes you need a guide to help you make that transition. If it was simple and you could have done it by yourself, you might have already made that step. So that's what I want to leave with people. You are lovable, you are deserving, you are worthy, and you are enough, and you can make that positive change in your life.
Beautiful. Yes, I love that. I so love the fact that we all have the ability to do that. By the way, just for point of clarity, I'm a zombie. We're all infected. So it's really more like the zombie virus. That's one of the reasons why I like the metaphor, is because it's really just how much is your history affecting your destiny. And that really is key, because you said it in your own words, which I think is brilliant, in that the only way that our history doesn't define our destiny is engage that frontal lobe that we talked about, that becomes kind of a thing when after you're 7 years old, and make decisions on a daily basis to move forward in your warrior mind, which is that intellectual, that frontal lobe, that where you can change, you can have a plan for your destiny. So I think that's brilliant. And I love your mission. I love the things you're doing. Let me ask you this, Shawna, obviously we can connect with you on Be Connected. I encourage everybody to reach out. Shawna, by the way, if you type in Shawna, Shawna, I think that's pretty much all you have to type, at least. And right now there's only, 22,000 or whatever on the platform. So it's a really, really huge opportunity for people to get in, get their story, start dealing with some very influential people like Shawna and others, and be able to get your story out. But how else do you want us to reach out? You have a book, you have a couple of things, and I'll post, by the way, links and stuff that you sent me in the show notes here. But any other ways you want people or a way that you want people to reach out to you?
There is, and I so appreciate you asking that, David. Of course, if someone is not currently on Be Connected, we'd encourage them to do that so they can find us here. But if you go to this site, Shawna360.com, so that's my name, SHAWNA 360.com. That is a site that will take you and make it available all the different places you can find me. It has all my social media sites, my website, links to books and free giveaways. It's my one-stop shopping place. So if you go to Shawna360.com, then you can reach out in a way or a platform that's comfortable for you, because everybody does different places for connecting, and because that's just the world we live in. So that's my one-stop shop.
That's a great strategy, having a place where they can go and find you. So we'll make sure we get that website up there, as well as your link on to the show on Be Connected and the replay. And this will be up in pure replay mode on that platform, and then it'll be up in the audio platform probably first part of next week. So anyway, well, thank you, Shawna. This has been awesome, a incredible journey. Your energy, I know you said that you're kind of wore out with this book launch thing when we started this, but you got great energy. And I think this is going to be an awesome show for people to consume on both the audio and the video. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, we're going to land the plane here, the final outro of It's Not the Getting There. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. See you then.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know.